Good afternoon. This is group video blog, I think 4 or 5. This is on chapter 4, covering statistical generalizations and just the whole things, all the things dealing with statistics, basically. So I'll just direct things to my counterparts over here.
Okay. Okay. So basically, we were reading about inductive reasoning, and an example provided for us in the book was saying that if you drive over a hump one time and then you do it again, and then you already know that the third time, if you drive over a hump again, it's going to mess up your car, and that's called inductive reasoning because you're using what you experienced to kind of dictate the direction you're going to go and what future actions you're going to take, which is not driving over the bump again.
And for me, I fully could relate to this topic and everything that was going on with the statistical part and inductive reasoning, just based off how I mapped off my life plan. At age 9, I decided I wanted to do criminal justice. I didn't want to do anything else. I didn't want to do anything with business, mathematics, because even at an early age, I noticed that my strong skills were in reading and more like the literature and writing areas. Math just wasn't the thing for me. So I've been dealing with the issues of math. I've always had tutors. I've always barely scraped through in my math classes, and it's always been a struggle. But just based off of those experiences and also what I learned from other people through statistics, like what are certain percentages of African American people that actually pass math class and go on to majoring in it, it's very low. So I just knew off the bat that if I was going to do anything as far as like going on continuing education, my main focus would be more of the writing literature aspect. So this is one of the reasons why inductive reasoning helped me to guide my future, and this is the reason why I'm studying criminal justice, and that's the field I'm going to be in. And I knocked out only one math class. That's another reason why I did criminal justice, because I only had one math class to take in being in this field, and I was guaranteed by several people, including under my department chair, I was told very often, as long as I took this one math class, knocked it out and passed it, everything else from here will be a breeze, and it has been. So I learned my lesson using inductive reasoning, why math is just not for me.
If you don't mind, I'm going to go next again. Yeah. Okay, another thing with inductive reasoning, like she said, when she was 9, she knew exactly what she wanted to do, what she wanted to be, and that's another thing that we could do as far as college goes. When we select classes and we want to know the professor before we get into the class, we
usually ask around.
We ask around, and we get facts from our peers. We get facts from other students that we don't really know on campus through social media, and we kind of fill out the professor, and we use Rate My Professor. Not me, but some people use Rate My Professor, and through inductive reasoning, taking observations from other people, but observing how they are as a student, because they can give you information and it not be factual. So you have to really know that person for yourself to say if their information that they're giving about a professor is credible, and then you can know for yourself if you want to take that professor. And a lot of times I've even asked about you from other people on campus, and I haven't got any negative feedback, but I didn't get much feedback. So I'm just kind of letting them know like how your class is going through observation. And another thing, factual evidence that someone can present me is their syllabus from that class, letting me know the workload, the type of professor, the way their grades go, their rubric, and their style of homework and all that other stuff. So even if a peer gives us their opinion, they can show us stuff like a syllabus to give us factual evidence about whether we should take a professor or not.
And also my criminal justice class, for police safety, I too had to deal with those same situations, because when I first got into the class, I was told by some of my peers that this dude is the whitest person that you probably know. Even though he is fully African American, he is very domineering, he's straightforward, he looks you dead in your eye, he assigns a lot of homework, and based on the personality traits that they gave, I assumed that this would probably be a little bit of a challenge, but I just know that everybody has like certain standards that they want their students to meet, or certain criteria that they want them to actually excel in. So I just knew based off of that, it wouldn't be that bad. And even after getting to know him and meet him, I feel like we are more relatable on the same page, because I'm more of a studious type of student. Like, I do as much as I can. I even attempt to do extra credit when it's given. So I didn't have any problems with my teacher. Luckily, some of the stuff that people were saying about him were inaccurate. So I'm glad I did the follow up research and analyzed and investigated what I was told for myself. So I'm actually happy that I ended up choosing him as a teacher for police safety rather than somebody else.
Well, my example of inductive reasoning is, again, coming from my workplace. As you know, diabetes is a serious illness. It may not seem serious at first because of it's just blood sugar, but there's a way of figuring out dosages for patients. And what they do is they take blood samples and they correlate that with statistical evidence as far as the dosage of the medicine. If the blood sugar is still running high after so many units of insulin, they know, in fact, to give more until that blood sugar drops down to a normal range. So that's my example of deductive reasoning.
Well, like your example coming from the medical aspect, and the example given in the book about breast cancer and people taking the precautions to go ahead and getting the breast tissue removed just in case they may get it. So they weren't certain that they would get it, but it was likely to happen because it was a hereditary thing going on in the family. And just like my family, diabetes is known to be in the men. Some of the men
I
in my
have
family.
diabetes as well, high blood pressure, heart attack issues. People are hard headed and don't know how to take medicine, so that's another disease as well.
And what my aunt did when it comes to diabetes, my grandfather has diabetes, and his son, he has two sons, and his firstborn son had diabetes, and my grandmother took the precautions when she had another son to get him checked out, and it came down he didn't have it. So by the time my uncle came and had his first son, he ended up having diabetes at the age of 2, and then he had 2 more children. The first son, well, the second son technically didn't have diabetes, but he wanted it because he seen it as a hereditary trait and thought it was something special. And then it came down to his last son had diabetes, and they knew ahead to prepare themselves. His wife, his newlywed wife, knew how to take the precautions of learning about diabetes, and she had to take care of her husband and the possibility of her having to take care of a child as well with diabetes. So that's inductive reasoning, being precautious, and before you are certain, taking the necessary steps to kind of inform yourself and be aware of what's going on and what can happen.
Any other key terms that stood out to you guys within this chapter that you can see is relevant to everyday life?
Statistical evidence. We use that every day. It's found in pretty much everything we do, like gas mileage, even in your classes, statistics, that's a big part. When they do demographics for students, patients, anything like that, statistical evidence, they use to draw those generalizations and make the best possible decisions from that.
Well, I actually use statistical evidence and about cars, and I ask people, like, is Ford to you a good is it a good type of car to have, brand? And then I went down specifically and asked some people that I knew with the same type of car previously some questions about what type of oil they use, how was the gas, just to get a few background information and evidence about how the car is before actually having it.
And that makes a lot of sense. Also, with this week's topic, I ended up like switching the topic and just giving it a little bit more of a feel to it, more of a relatable approach to it, based off how I did it. What I did was I took on the charge of observing African American communities and the whole progression of education among those communities, like in the slavery days from the 1900s, leading on to the earlier days now, as in the current millennium that we live in. And basically, what I saw, which was very interesting, one of my resources that you'll see in my paper as well, I found a fact sheet from the NAACP, National Association and Colored People, all of that, whatever. But I looked at the fact sheet, and it basically, first it introduced the fact that African Americans are more likely to attend poverty-stricken public schools rather than schools that are more well-paid and more developed by the community that's surrounding it. So that kind of stood out to me because everybody that I know or I've ever been friends with always went to a public school, and that public school was not like doing that well as far as promoting graduates coming out of the school, whatever, things like that. So that's one thing that also stood out to me. And it also said like about 15% of those African Americans that do end up graduating from high school may not even go to college. So I am the exception to the rule, but it's funny how sometimes like I want to say like I wish these facts and these statistics and these surveys weren't true, but based off of like how the parenting household is, it's two parents, how the child raised and come up and do certain things. That's actually the reason why statistics are the way they are now. While the African American race as a whole is like seen below barrel because of recent history and how the family structure developed, how it affects the child, what the child end up doing in their lives, and whether they'll become a criminal or not. That's what comes into play with all this stuff. So I just found that to be very influential. But I will say, even though I came from a rural area and I came from all those different schools and such things, I am the exception to the rule because I was determined to get here. I got myself into college. I did all the paperwork, so I didn't let anything like stop me or cause me not to exceed just because the circumstances were against me. So that's one thing I noticed with statistics.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you brought that statistic up because there is a section here about biases to statistical evidence. And with the African Americans that, grow up in a poverty-stricken environment and the school reflects that environment, well, I believe that partly there's a bias upon that statistic because you're from the outside looking in, not from the inside looking out. Your viewpoint may be just, slightly different than the person making that original statistic.
Exactly.
So if I was, the one who was in the poverty-stricken neighborhood, if I did the same statistic, I believe that it would have come out a little differently. And even in the book, it says that you really want to sample larger populations, maybe like all across America, to see exactly what it is, because I'm sure there are exceptions to the rule, and those students, they attend other schools out of their district. So, you can't really base your statistic like that off of, the outside looking in. So whoever performed that statistic, I really, sometimes I want to disagree with things like that.
The sad thing is I feel the same way about stuff like that. That's why I feel like as a whole we shouldn't be all put down in this one barrel or this one lane. But based off the majority, and even in criminal justice, we talk about this all the time. I may be the exceptions to the rule. Like I have strayed away from deviance because of my informal social control, which means I have parents and family members and even friends that pull me back whenever I distance myself away from the path which I follow. But in the majority of the people that are committing crimes are African American males.
It's true.
In criminal justice. These are the main people being arrested in criminal justice. These are the main people being seen doing these crimes out in the open. It just happens all the time. So even though you want to like pay attention to the exceptions, the small percentages where things don't occur, we always look at the majority. So that's the main reason why they say, oh, cops don't like black people. Actually, it's just like if they're looking for a specific suspect and you meet the criteria, it just so happens you met the criteria. And half the time they'll give you a pat on the back and say, we're sorry, we questioned you for this long and we made you sit in the hot sun and drill you this long, but you weren't the right person. But Thank you for your cooperation. And you just have to accept it. Sometimes it's just how it works.
So do you guys feel that with this whole Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case, do you believe from George Zimmerman's standpoint he was trying to use inductive reasoning and trying to find good evidence against Trayvon Martin to draw like the generalization of he fits this criteria of what I see as being in our neighborhood and not supposed to be in our neighborhood, and this is how I'm gonna this is what I'm gonna do about it. This is these conclusions are gonna guide my actions because he fits this criteria, so it's okay for me to act this way. So do you guys, I mean, how do you feel about that?
From my standpoint, I can't.
Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt y'all, but my time is up here.
All right, you will see William exiting the video because he has work, so we're gonna finish up the last few minutes of this entire project. So as we adjust, I will continue on answering the question. Basically, I feel as if it wasn't enough evidence for me to give a full, complete verdict on it. But dealing with that situation, you probably could have used statistical reasons. There aren't that many African American people in my particular neighborhood. You probably could have been thinking like that. This person is wearing a hoodie. It's nighttime. That's usually, in robberies, that's what you usually see. He probably didn't know what was going on. I'm not saying what he did was right because I don't believe in it at all. But he acted on what he thought was good faith, as if he was an actual law enforcement officer. That's what it looks like in that situation.
When it came down to the conclusion was him killing Trayvon Martin. But the previous evidence that was presented to the jury was the fact that he followed him and he called 911. So based off him not following what 911 said, his conclusions that resulted in him killing someone, it wasn't inductive reasoning because you're supposed to find the truth. And by killing that person, you're not allowing yourself nor the right authorities to kind of sit down and say, hey, Trayvon, like, why were you here? He never got the chance to say, hey, I'm going to such and such house, I'm going to see my dad, and stuff like that. And so that's the importance of inductive reasoning, is to try to find the truth before we act on it and decide what we're going to do, because it kind of guides us into the right direction. For example, I'm supposed to have jury duty soon, but technically I'm a Savannah resident, so I can't do it in Augusta. And what I was excited about, I've always been excited to have jury duty, but I just thought, hey, we get to be in the courtroom, it's gonna be fun. But I didn't get to see there's all this evidence, but there's different interpretations of what's happening. Like some may say, like you just said, well, George Zimmerman felt like he was obligated to get justice for himself and for the neighborhood, but he didn't obey the rule of the authority from the cops. So another person may say, well, it was raining, he had his head covered to protect himself from the rain. That's another interpretation of what happened. But the physical evidence is what's supposed to guide our actions, and what the jury felt was he wasn't guilty of those crimes, regardless of the fact that a life was taken or not. And I was anxious to see what kind of case I would get now that I'm learning this new information, and I'm taking ethics and global issues as well, so I could kind of apply the different ethical theories and the critical thinking and different interpretations and reasoning and finding different conclusions to what I believe happened and how to dictate my opinions on the case. So I would really hope to get it again, but in Savannah, so I can actually go. Because I believe that significant factors and characteristics in every situation are important, and that's the basis of where we get our evidence and where we can go from. If you just say, I have an opinion, this is my opinion, and I'm sticking to it, you're not really going to get this way.
Exactly. And even going back just a little bit, but not to go into too much detail about it, even with the Zimmerman trial, like I said, though when they broadcast certain trials, they only show you what they allow you to show you.
Exactly.
They didn't give you the full extent of the information because, one, if the public has their hands, has their eyes on that specific information, it taints the case in actually what can happen. And you also have to keep in mind, he didn't have a jury of his peers, the Sixth Amendment. You're supposed to have a jury of peers that you can go along with, that you can look to, that will kind of side in your favor. It's supposed to be a biased jury, like everybody's supposed to work. But he had all females. Now, clearly, when you do a trial, or if you ever look at a courtroom case, you always see some males or females in their mid twenties,
age,
elderly
gender. Age is like, that's the biggest thing. Gender is the biggest thing. Race is the biggest thing, because you're getting all, like I said, all types of interpretations. You may look at it from a young female standpoint. A white mother may look at it from the role of a mother, the role of a wife, the role of a woman, feeling for her child. She has so many different interpretations she can play. And a male may just say, you killed someone's son, you killed someone's friend, you killed a boy, a young boy. So the variety of people in that case was, to me, it was whack. I'm just going to put it out there. It's very whack, because the statistical evidence was not adding up. From what I heard, they were all of the same skin complexion, clothes, not too many people from different types of neighborhoods and stuff like that. So it's kind of, once you put an idea or an interpretation out there, one person can say, oh, I feel like he didn't do it, I feel like he was standing his ground. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't take long for everybody to jump on the bandwagon and reach a verdict. And basically what I was reading in the book also was talking about advertisements and some of the different tactics that TV advertisers use. And they basically get evidence and surveys from how we watch TV. When's the time that most people during this age group that can really follow this show? If it's a cartoon, what times are parents telling their children to go to sleep? What times are they going to be watching it? What days can they watch it? And if it's going to be on which station, which network. And that's very important when to determine the where, the who, and the when. Especially like when you see all those commercials during the Super Bowl, mm-hmm. and everybody, that's the perfect time. So if you have a new food, a new drink, a new outfit, a new idea, to get a celebrity to be in that commercial and that advertisement and play it during the Super Bowl.
And also, like with one of your examples I just saw, where the spin statistic, it basically is like seeking to eliminate problems within an entire area, entire group of people, that affects it on a small scale. I think that's what it's saying to a certain extent. With that, it comes back to my topic, like with African Americans in the education system. We started off under the less than 1%. Some of us barely even got the chance to read. Some of the people that were just slaves, if they were lucky enough to gain those opportunities to read and to advance, they were just lucky. But a lot of those people, I want to say, like, I don't know the exact percentages, like, up to date as of right now, but a lot of those people started off barely even making it work, very illiterate. So as the years progress on, more people get into education. You have more African Americans have opportunities at getting education. You just see like how the percentage has depleted. It's almost like people don't value education anymore. People aren't like really trying like how they can. I also read with the NAACP fact sheet, less than 15% actually make it through middle school and high school. African American kids, we're seen as the lowest group out of all to actually like continue education and progress on. And I can actually attest to that too, because it also talked about that in my psychology book last semester. And it's funny because those surveys, the surveys they took, as if like in 2-parent homes, the child is more likely, 5% more likely to actually go on and do something successful rather than drop out. But if you had encountered any type of criminal activity before you were the age of 18, it actually showed in my psychology statistic book that most likely you're not going to finish out school. And I can actually relate to that personally, because with my cousin, she was always hanging out with the wrong crowd. Even though she lived in a 2-parent home, after a while, her parents split up. So all she had was her mom. Her mom was very domineering, so that's all she had to look up to. So being the fact that that's all she had as far as like a role model, she went to the wrong crowd. She started hanging out with the wrong people. And then she got arrested around 16 for something small such as stealing, and then a couple years later, even that, like, she didn't even make it to like high school at all. She didn't graduate at all, and I'm doing more than she probably ever would have did, and I'm even like younger than her. That's what makes it just so mind-boggling. It's like she actually plays into that stereotype of the statistic. Individuals that come from divorced family homes, if they encounter the legal system before the age of 18, they will most likely not graduate or go on to any type of post-secondary school institute. So that right there, it breaks my heart, but that's where it comes into play. When I look at all the stuff as criminal justice major, we look at the majority rules, everything small just doesn't matter. So at the same time, I want to be upset, but it's like you have to take a certain responsibility upon yourself to not be a statistic, to not fall into those categories, to not make the entire race as a whole that's already far behind 400 years look bad as it is now. So,
and the other day in class, it really didn't dawn on me that I was in a statistic, because I've always seen myself, okay, I was raised by my grandparents, but I never considered myself growing up in a 2-parent home, even though I did. I grew up in a 3-parent home because my mom moved in half the time. So I've always lived with my grandparents, who's been married for almost 40 years now, and I've always seen my great-grandparents who's been married for 63 years. So I've always seen strong relationships, but I've always, with my mom, it was always something different, but I've always had her and my grandparents around. So to me, I'm like, what statistic am I? I didn't consider, if they weren't your physical, biological parents, then just because you're with them, it wasn't a really 2-parent home statistic. So it was hard for me to kind of see where I fell, because I mean, now my mom's in Augusta and I'm here with my grandparents. So now when you said it in class, I'm like, oh, okay, like I didn't know grandparents were included. So yeah, I am in a 2-parent home. And it made me feel good, not because I want to be a part of certain statistics, but to know that I have people that I can call my parents or that can raise me, and I can grow up to be a good person in society and useful to the general public, instead of being one of those kids or one of those statistics that society has to find a way to kind of deal with them yet prevent future problems from happening. And which is example is found on page 143, where I was kind of like, wow, you know, people are eliminating future problems. And then I saw where they were talking about statistical research and how they kind of fill things out of where they should be eliminated or modified or just stop being funded in general. When I was in high school, I was the president of the abstinence organization, and I started off at the bottom, and I mean, most people just showed their true colors and couldn't handle it, and I was still there building that organization from the ground up. And then towards my senior year, we stopped getting funding from the government, and I'm like, why isn't protecting yourself? Because it's more than that. It's more than not having sex. It's more than not using drugs. It's peer pressure, and it's everyday life for us. You can just say, hey man, why don't you come eat? Well, I have class, and then just that quick you're like, well, I am hungry, so I guess I'm gonna go. And people don't realize the simplest stuff, just as skipping class to go eat, is peer pressure. So for them to just feel like they can deny funding or modify it, if you're not modifying it to, like they said on page 143, to prevent future problems, which is an increase in teenage pregnancy, which can cause an increase of infant mortality and stuff like that, I feel like important things shouldn't be cut. We should find a way as society and citizens of America to make things work. We have more condom commercials. I don't even recall when I saw an abstinence commercial.
And it's so funny that you brought that to my attention, because it also comes back to education and all this other stuff. With this chapter, the main thing it focuses on is like taking surveys. Surveys are always being taken. It could be simple as, oh, how many people like blue? I'm going to poll that one day and then see how many people like blue and then build on that survey which I created.
Exactly, and with education, they could ask, well, how many people would prefer an ebook or a textbook in front of you? And then you don't have to have certain schools of poverty because the technology age is increasing. There's more ebooks, nooks, tablets, iPads, cell phones you can read documents on. So I feel like there should be no education. There should be no reason why education doesn't have funding. We have ways to view, like the Microsoft Office book. I seen people in my class while I'm reading on my hard copy, they're reading on the internet, and I'm like, okay, wow, I just spent $20 and you're reading it for free.
And
so,
to piggyback on what you said, it also comes into play when people are making these surveys and looking at these numbers. They're not looking at the actual identity of the person that was put in this poll of this group of people that represent this select category of what you're polling. So although it may be a good cause, and I'm all for it too as well, it may be a good cause and I'm backing it, but in their eyes they rather put money towards something that's going to keep more students coming, like athletics. The athletic department in any school, if the school's doing successful and they're winning championships, that money will go directly to them rather than anybody else.
Savannah State, we aren't winning anything. Why do I have to pay for it? I don't go to any games, whether it's golf, tennis, basketball, football, but yet I still have to pay for it. I haven't been to the gym since I've been here, but I'm paying for it. Why? I feel like we should have selective dues. They should have some way of signing into a computer or something to see if you paid your tuition towards this certain organization, and then if you haven't, then you could pay like a certain amount for a day pass or a certain amount for a week or a month. But I don't think that we should be able to have to pay for everything.
But also that comes into that you're just one voice, and that one voice is powerful, but you also need a group of other people to come back with you to say
because
something.
The statistical research is saying that, well, we still have people coming to the games. They're not counting that many people that's not coming to the games.
Nobody's like sitting here saying, oh, well, I disagree with this, I don't like this, and actually doing something about it. We're just still talking about it on the table. There's no blueprint to the solutions of what's going on, which we disagree
There's
with.
no survey about how many people feel like this fee or that fee.
Because I feel the same way. Half the time I don't even like use the bus. I either like hop a ride with somebody, but that's automatically in my payments as far as like what I do each semester, each year. So I'm in the same boat as you. I feel the same exact way. But like I said, when it comes to statistical evidence, they're just gathering evidence numbers. They're not looking at the actual people, the faces, the people that endure these experiences on a daily basis.
And that's why I enjoy campaigning specifically. When I was going around campaigning for President Obama's recent campaign, I stopped at one house, and I mean, whether I'm just coming to say, hey, make sure you register to vote. I wasn't knocking on doors saying, hey, President Obama, re-elect him. No, because that may not be your views, and I respect that.
And there could be a percentage number of people that actually did that actually could have catapulted and pushed him to actually winning. That could be also a poll as well.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, I kind of get to know who I'm talking to first. I don't believe in just knocking, hey, remember to vote on Tuesday, and leave. I kind of want to know, the constituents in the community. And even though we weren't in Savannah, we were in Jacksonville, it was still nice to know how people were feeling. And we actually got dropped off in a, what's his name? Not Mitt Romney. Yes, Mitt Romney. We actually got dropped off in a neighborhood full of Mitt Romney people. So it was kind of hard to knock on the door, and they seeing us. We were campaigning. We didn't have any President Obama paraphernalia on, but we were just kind of say, hey, we're just kind of encouraging people to vote early. And they're looking at us like, you're African American. You're not here to tell us to vote for Mitt Romney. You see,
and that's another statistic as well. Not everybody's probably behind the Barack Obama campaign.
Exactly.
I know a bunch of African Americans that actually switched certain principles when he started actually taxing people that were actually rich. A whole bunch of people I know in the community, whether that's like in music, in art, in acting, whatever, they all kind of like switch to the Republican Party, so they weren't taxed. Like, their money's not being taxed just because they're making millions.
But that was another thing when I was doing my statistical research. Primarily, my goal was to see who was going to vote early. How many people have already voted early? How many people kind of know why they want to vote on a certain candidate? But one guy threw me off. He's like, "I'm not going to vote," and I'm like, "Why?"
Yeah, I got a lot of that as well.
To me, I don't push you to vote for anybody, but the voting period to get to know why you're voting and the struggle. I'm going to take it back to slavery and what we fought for. Just seeing you as an African American, just to kind of know, like, how do you feel about it? I'm not going to say, well, they fought for our right. Yes, that's very true, and I feel like they fought for my right, so why not? I was excited to vote, but to just say, I'm not voting because I don't want to vote, and then when an issue comes up in the community and maybe they're tearing down your neighborhood and you have to move, you're like, okay, I don't want to move. Well, you said that same thing. I don't want to vote, and your vote could have saved your neighborhood or your friend's neighborhood or somebody else. So I believe that the research, the evidence, the polls, the survey is very important and it's very useful.
And it just comes back to statistical generalizations are all throughout society. We gather evidence, we analyze things, we come to conclusions about things, and this is how it all comes into play. This is probably going to be a close of our actually group video, and we thank you for listening. At the end, we're probably going to include a couple of citations. I'll send you a Word attachment along with the link to this video with our citations, all the citations that we used throughout this video and everything that helped bring this together. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So that's about it.